So I don't know about you, but I have been imagining this for a long time. It just speaks to the power of our imagination. Many of us for a long time have, for several years now, have held the vision of having musicians, more than one musician at a time, be on our stage. And we have recruited people and talked to people, and we've done all the legwork to make that happen. And so how awesome is that we reap the benefits of that this morning. Can you imagine peace? Can you imagine a world where we're all one? Where there's no greed, there's no hunger, there's nothing to live or die for? Can you imagine it? Can you imagine what that would be like? Ernest Holmes, from the founder of Science in the Mind, wrote, "You can attract only that which you first mentally become and feel yourself to be in reality." You have to first hold it in your mind, and then you have to feel it before it can ever become real. Our theme this year is the courage to imagine. And so as we move forward, today is about the courage to imagine peace. And right now, I was sharing with Russell just before the service started, I am imagining these little Lego guys with the samurai hats who are known as my antibodies. And they are running through my body, and they are attacking whatever's going on with my throat. So you need to know, so I'm going to tell you to take a deep breath in a minute. This service is not going to be like other services, because I'm not too sure that my voice will, how long my voice is going to last. So just take a deep breath. And you'll either love it or you'll hate it, and it won't matter because it's going to change. All right? So I'm going to prep that for you. This is going to be an audience participation Sunday. So I'm going to have you help me teach my lesson, just in case my voice goes out. So I'm going to have you help me. So our founder, Charles Fillmore, believed that imagination was one of our greatest spiritual powers. And he placed it between our eyebrows. Now, in most Eastern religions, that's known as our third eye. My guru taught us that it was our first eye, because it is the seat of our intuition. And it is the seat of our spiritual eye. You see, believe it or not, we can't always trust what we see. Sometimes what we think we perceived is completely wrong because it's based on a story that we're running in our head. But yet, if we check in with our spiritual eye, if we check in with our intuition, we see the truth as it exists. So imagination, according to Reverend Linda Martello-Whitsitt, who's the Vice President of Silent Unity, to activate imagination, we first have to conceive it. Like, we first have to believe that it can exist, that there is a possibility for peace in your life. You have to believe that that's true. Now, in Galatians, we read that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, and faithfulness. We were born to be peacemakers. We were born to be at peace. Peace, be still. So we have to first open to the possibility that we can have more peace in our life, that we can be peacemakers. And then we have to begin to hold the vision, to feel that peace within us. You know, kids have the greatest imaginations ever. Like, they see things that we could never dream as possible. Like, they just don't know limits. We watched my little 4-year-old granddaughter climb to the top of a rope in a barn. And I'm going to tell you, I'd have been scared, you know what, had I climbed that high up. But she never doubted she could do it. She held that vision. She would look, she'd stop and she'd pause and she'd look up at the top of that ring, and her mom would say, now remember, everybody that touches the ring gets a smoothie. She'd pull herself up one more rung, right? Great imaginations. If we could just tap back into that imagination that we had as children, to imagine the peace that we desire to have in our lives. Last Tuesday, I had the honor of having lunch with probably 200 or 300 other ministers from the Fort Wayne area. And the topic of discussion was, how do we cross cultural, religious, and other barriers that divide, so that we can create a community of unity? How can we meet other people who are different from us? How can we create a community that's safe for all of our children, that's safe for us? How can we teach each other to be understanding and to be loving? And part of our discussion sounded a lot like Paul's letter to the Ephesians. And so this is the crux of our discussion today, is we imagine peace in our lives. I am telling you that you are responsible and able to be a peacemaker. In your relationships, in your own personal life, and in your community. And there are some things that you can do to make that happen. Paul wrote to the Ephesians, I, therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of spirit in the bond of peace. So, let's look at these instructions. Humility. What does it mean to be humble? Somebody give me a word.
Teachable.
Teachable. What else? What does it mean to be humble? Open. Understanding and admitting you don't know. I don't like to do that. I can admit I got some humility issues to work out. All right, so I want you to turn to your neighbor. I want you to think about, where in your life are you being called to be more humble? Where are you being called to say, I don't have the answer. I don't know. So turn to your neighbor and talk about where you're being called to be more humble, to have humility, and describe an action you're willing to take this week to be a little more humble. So Andrea, you can move up to this row and talk to Lisa if you'd like. Yeah. Move on up, girlfriend. All right, go. You can pan the crowd. All right, let's look at the second set of instructions. Gentleness. What does it mean to be gentle? Accepting, kind. What else? Patient. Loving.
Forgiving.
Oh, forgiving. Ooh, absolutely.
Conscious of other people's feelings.
Yes. So, who do you think, where do we need gentleness the most?
With ourselves.
With ourselves. Absolutely. If we could just learn to be gentle with ourselves, right? It'd be a lot easier to be gentle to everyone else. So again, turn to your neighbor and think about where in your life you're being called to be more gentle. And what would that look like if you practiced it tomorrow?
Not speaking. If somebody asks a question, not speaking from my mind.
I'm a therapist, so I have a lot of trouble with it. So
Yeah.
it's trying to,
Yeah.
but for me, it would be being aware that sometimes I wind myself up in anxiety for no reason
All right. Our next part of being a peacemaker is my personal favorite, patience.
Oh, God.
When I was in recovery, I met a woman named Kate, and she sang this song that I absolutely loved. When you pray for patience, tribulation is what you get. What does it mean to be patient? How do you know that you're being patient?
You're calm, you're not.
You're calm.
You're
Stuff
listening.
doesn't bother you.
You're listening.
You're listening.
Trusting the flow.
Trusting the flow. Mindful. Absolutely.
You're not judging.
You're not judging. Can you imagine if we could just go through our world understanding that everything is in divine order? That it's all happening exactly like it's supposed to be happening. In the right and perfect time. Which is never on my time schedule, I'm just saying. All right, turn to your neighbor. Where do you need to be more patient? Who do you need to be more patient with? And how can you begin to be more patient in your life? So Merriam-Webster's dictionary says that patience is the ability to remain calm and not become annoyed when dealing with problems or difficult people. Next, bearing with one another in love. So, this interesting thing, this word bearing, is really about walking alongside of. How do we walk alongside other people? One of the stories that I'm always really mindful of when I'm thinking about love is a story that I heard about the Dalai Lama. He was being interviewed, and they were asking him about the Japanese who had come in and taken over his country, killed thousands of people, destroyed the Tibetan culture. And he said to the reporter, there are those people in our lives that are easy to love. I think about those sweet little faces of my grandbabies that I saw Friday and Saturday. Easy to love. But then there are our sacred friends. Our sacred friends are those people who come into our life who teach us how to really love. How to love when it's not comfortable. How to love when it's painful. How to love when it's scary. How to love when it would be much easier to be full of rage and anger and strike out. He said to the reporter, sacred friends are very, very hard to love. Very, very difficult. But they call me to love better. The Japanese are my sacred friends. Turn to your neighbor and share with them a sacred friend that you need to love better, and how you might be able to do that. And our very last set of instructions. Making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. What does unity mean? What does it mean? We're at Unity Fort Wayne Spiritual Center. We're part of the Unity movement. But what does that mean?
Coming together.
Coming together,
Connected,
being one, connected,
accepting differences.
bonded, accepting differences. Absolutely.
Celebrating differences.
Celebrating differences. Absolutely.
Being
Yeah.
honest.
Being honest. So our last discussion, how can you connect to someone today? How can you connect? What's one thing you can do this week to connect to someone in the bond of peace? So share that with your neighbor. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for spending some time with each other, for creating some unity at Unity Fort Wayne Spiritual Center. I hope that you got to know each other just a little bit better. And I hope you learned a little bit about yourself and being peace. To have more peace in your life. To create a world of peace. You have the ability and the responsibility to be peace. The Bible says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." As John Lennon would say, I hope someday you'll join us. Hopefully that will be today. Namaste.